Let's turn now to the Vice Chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee, Senator Saxby Chambliss, and Senator Patty Murray, a member of the Senate Democratic leadership. Thanks to you both for joining us. And Senator Chambliss, let me begin with you as Vice Chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee. When did you first find out about this investigation of General Petraeus, and what were you told?
Well, I was not told about it until Friday. The intelligence community became aware of it on Tuesday, actually late afternoon on Tuesday, and then by the time it sifted through the appropriate channels through the White House, we were told on Friday.
So, one of your colleagues, Congressman Peter King, the chair of the Homeland Security Committee in the House, says that the FBI director had an obligation to go to the White House and inform the relevant authorities earlier. Do you agree with that?
Well, listen, David Petraeus is a great leader, a great patriot, and he is a guy who has probably contributed more to the safety of the United States of America over the last decade than any one single individual. And he's a good leader. And what leaders do when they're put in a difficult position is they lead. And he led here by doing what he thought was the right thing. And I think he did do the right thing. I don't think there's any question but it would have been very difficult to continue in his position if he had subordinates who might have engaged in similar activity. How would he deal with that? So I know that was his thought process, and at the end of the day, he did do the right thing, and of course the president did the right thing to accept his resignation.
Two more quick questions, then I want to move on to Senator Murray. Was General Petraeus straight with you and the committee during the confirmation process? Generally, there's a vetting that asks these kinds of questions before someone is confirmed as CIA director, and I know that he is not going to appear before your committee now next week to discuss the whole situation in Benghazi. Do you want to hear from him at some point?
Well, he and I have already had a conversation, and, he's trying to put his life back together right now, and that's what he needs to focus on. His very capable deputy, Mike Morrell, is going to be testifying next Thursday. That's fine because he certainly was there when all the decisions were made relative to Benghazi. But at the end of the day, I would not rule out General Petraeus being called to testify. That still could happen at some point in time.
And you're confident he told the truth to the committee during his confirmation hearings?
Oh, absolutely, I am. I don't know exact date of when all of this process began and what took place there, but we're confident that David Petraeus was very straight up with us during the confirmation hearing.
Senator Murray, you're not a member of the Intelligence Committee, but you are a member of the Democratic leadership. Do you have any concerns with how this was handled?
Well, first of all, George, great to be with you and with Saxby Chambliss today, and I would be remiss if I didn't thank all of the men and women who served our country on this Veterans Day to start. I think Senator Chambliss has said it very well, and I think that General Petraeus has served our country incredibly well in many different forms and fashions, and like all men and women who have served our country, we owe him a debt of gratitude, and I hope this moves forward quickly for him and his family to resolve.
One thing that is also coming on quickly are all these negotiations over the fiscal cliff. If Congress doesn't do something, we're going to have tax increases on January 1st, spending cuts on January 1st, more than $500 billion, likely to cost every American family about $2,000. Senator Murray, let me begin with you. We've already heard from the Speaker and the President. Speaker Boehner says tax hikes are unacceptable. President Obama says he won't sign any extension of the tax hikes for the wealthiest Americans. We've also heard from Senator McConnell, the Republican leader in the Senate, who says he will not raise taxes to turn off those spending cuts, the sequester. So if Senator McConnell and Speaker Boehner don't bend, do you still believe the president should go right up to the brink, go off the fiscal cliff, and allow the tax cuts to expire?
Well, here's where we are. Our country has a tremendous debt and deficit problem. We also have a challenge in making sure that we educate our workforce. We need to make sure we care for our veterans who need that care today. We need to have research, and we need to be able to compete in a global marketplace. Those investments are important. Everyone who has looked at this, including the super committee that I served on, said that we need to have revenue as part of the solution to this problem, as well as looking at entitlements and spending cuts. What has been the missing ingredient in Congress to date has been the revenue, and to make sure that it is fairly distributed and the wealthy pay their fair share. That is what we face right now. If our Republican counterparts can step forward with that revenue piece, we will be able to find a solution.
And if not, go off the cliff?
Well, clearly we have the ability between now and the end of the year to not go off the cliff. But we can't accept an unfair deal that piles all of this on the middle class and tells them they have to support it. We have to make sure that the wealthiest Americans pay their fair share. We just had an election where President Obama ran on that. We increased our majority in the Senate with Democratic candidates who said that to solve this problem, the wealthiest Americans have to pay their fair share too. So if the Republicans will not agree with that, we will reach a point at the end of this year where all the tax cuts expire, and we'll start over next year, and whatever we do will be a tax cut for whatever package we put together. And that may be the way to get past this. And
Senator Chambliss, you said there could be riots in the streets if this isn't done right. So what is the right way to do this? You just heard Senator Murray say that a defining principle for the Democrats, the president has said exactly the same thing, is that the wealthier are going to have to pay more.
Well, what's going to have to happen, George, is that because there's no silver bullet, as was discussed in the Simpson-Bowles Commission and ultimately a recommendation of the Simpson-Bowles Commission to do this. We got to look at cutting spending. We still spend way too much money in Washington. What is choking our economy and what is choking the economy of Greece, and this is why I referred to it the way I did, even though it was a figure of speech, but entitlements are choking us, and we've got to make the real right kinds of reforms there to make sure that we do it right, that we protect these programs. And then thirdly, listen, Speaker Boehner said it, I think, very well. I thought he showed great leadership by saying that revenues need to be on the table. Again, though, we need to do it in the right way. Bowles-Simpson said, look, eliminate all these tax credits and tax deductions. You can generate somewhere $1 to $1.2 trillion in additional revenue. You can actually lower tax rates by doing that. And I think at the end of the day, what's got to happen, George, we've got to get this economy going again. We've had an outside group, Ernst & Young, look at the raising of the taxes on the highest income earners. What they concluded was we would immediately lose 700,000 jobs in America. Now, is that the kind of economy that this president wants to start out with in his second term? I don't think so. President Obama said 2 years ago, now is not the time with a sluggish economy to raise taxes. We need to consider the fact that the folks he's talking about raising taxes on are the job creators, the small business community. So there's a right way to do this and there's a wrong way to do it. And Speaker Boehner was absolutely correct that you do have to have revenues on the table, but that does not mean raising taxes. There are other ways to do it to get the economy going.
Senator Murray, let me come back to you then, because you said that it might be the best way might be to have to go off the cliff, have the tax rates expire, and then to come in and cut taxes. But what about the concern that going off the cliff will create financial chaos? Equity markets will drop during the month of December, and of course that could have an impact on economic growth.
Look, no one wants to go off the fiscal cliff, but a fair deal is absolutely critical here. I'm delighted to hear Speaker Boehner, and I know Senator Chambliss has said repeatedly revenue has to be a part of this. That's a good step forward. But how that revenue is collected is critical. If it is just eliminating tax loopholes that affect middle-class families and they don't have a mortgage deduction or a charitable deduction, or we raise their copay on Medicare, all of that revenue falling on the middle class is not a fair and balanced way to get to a deal. So how that is distributed is a critical part of that. We have a way to do this. The Senate has already passed a bill that extends the tax cuts for 98% of Americans. And if the House will pass that bill, we're well on our way to working towards a solution before that fiscal cliff.
Senator Chambliss, the president called for that on Friday as well. Do you think the House should pass that bill that has already passed the Senate?
No, I don't think so. Obviously, that was a party line vote in the Senate, and that's not the kind of common ground that we need to work towards. We should ultimately get a big vote in the House and the Senate to fix this problem, George. And doing it on a party line vote is obviously not getting a big vote. We need to put politics aside. The election is over. President Obama has won. It's now time for him to lead, and leading should not be do it my way or we're not going to do this. Leading means you sit down around a table and make the hard and tough decisions. Patty was on the super committee. I've been involved in the Gang of Six. These are very, very difficult issues to deal with. And ultimately, it's going to boil down to reforming entitlements and revenues. And I assure you, if we don't put politics aside, then we're not going to solve it. So it's imperative that we look at it at the right way now.
Bottom line for each of you, Senator Murray, Senator Chambliss, Senator Murray, you go first. Does this get done by December 31st?
I believe we have the opportunity to do that. And Senator Chambliss is right. It needs all the ingredients. We need to look at every aspect of the federal budget to put it together. But the one key issue that hasn't been resolved is how we put revenue into that. And I would be delighted to look at a plan that puts that revenue on the table in a way that is fair and balanced. And if we can do that, we can get to a deal.
Senator Chambliss?
Well, I think the process can be put in place. Obviously, tax reform is going to be a major part of this, and we're not next 45 days. The other issue that is critical for revenues to come on the table is a big number in entitlement reform. And we're not going to reform entitlements over the next 45 days. But, George, we can put a process in place, and I certainly hope that happens. And I think it will. I mean, we've got to be responsible to the people who sent us to Washington, and this is one of those difficult times that you actually hope for, because we have the opportunity to change the fiscal course of America, and we need to step up and do the right thing now, but most importantly, do it in the right way.
Senator Chambliss, Senator Murray, thanks very much for your time this morning.
You bet.